Hello and welcome to the Teach Music 21C podcast series. I'm Merlin Thompson, the creator and founder of Teach Music 21C, a professional development program for music studio teachers where we believe the best way to create musical success is for teachers and students to build it together. And today, I'd like to welcome once more Lorrie Merrell, a longtime colleague and supporter of Teach Music 21C. Welcome, Lorrie.
Hi, it's nice to be here.
Great to see you. And not long ago, you mentioned something to me about desire and the fundamental role it plays in students' musical development. Uh, I'm just going to turn things to you because I'm really curious to know what kind of things you've discovered.
Well, I've discovered that with using the 21C, when I really incorporated half of my repertoire with half of what they wanted, and asking them to bring their own music and let's study half and half like that, it really increased their desire and their motivation and their learning. They learned faster. I have a student that brought a piece that was so rhythmically difficult. There was no way he could have done it on his level, but he wanted to play that piece so badly. It was a pop piece.
Sure.
That did it, and he got it. And after a few lessons of some rhythm, he had that piece down. He sang it. It increased his popularity at school because he was a good singer too. So singing it and playing it and, the strong beat and his rhythm, it just increased his desire and his motivation 100-fold in music.
It's so interesting to talk about motivation and the connection to desire and to think about how, I remember the early days of my teaching, which is a long time ago now, but I remember those days really well. And the search on my part to find the repertoire that was going to work for each and every one of my students. And I had it in my mind that if I could just find this repertoire, that everything would turn out great. Students would be practicing, they wouldn't be encountering any problems, people would just keep on going. And it just never happened.
Yeah, I used to feel like that was my responsibility. And the time I would spend, sometimes a whole lesson of playing excerpts, and what about this, and what about that? And you'd get a no on every one. And it was just really depressing and time wasting. So when the simple solution was turn it over to them, you bring me the music that you want. It was such an easy solution. But I didn't think about that until 21C.
Yeah, it's a scary thing though, isn't it? Because, to a certain extent, deciding what repertoire students are going to play creates a certain amount of, I guess, certainty on our part. We know what they're going to be bringing. We know if we've got the tools to respond to those pieces or not. And typically we are choosing pieces that we know, oh, yes, I know how to teach this piece. So on we go. So it is a little bit of a kind of stepping off the edge kind of situation where we're not sure what we're going to be doing. But like you just mentioned, that student brings that popular piece with the complex rhythms. How are we actually going to help them out?
It's scary. And they would bring me that music. And at first I didn't know what to do, but I remembered the basics. Okay, first of all, we've got to get a beat here. Right. And then we've got to straighten out the rhythm. And then fingering is always an issue with those pieces and how to finger it and voice it. And so I would just try to pull from what I usually teach and put it into the new piece. And you just have to do it.
Yeah.
And I got better at teaching and moving the piece around for them too, cutting parts out and adding parts here and ending it here. I said, we can devise this piece for you, the length and the verses and everything that you want to do. We can mess around with that and get it so that it's just right for you. And I got more and more comfortable with that through the last 2 years of doing it. But at the beginning, I was scared, and it was a new kind of music to look at because I was always just classical. But it's not so hard once you get started.
Yeah, And isn't that the truth? Once you get your feet in the water and you get kind of adjusted to the temperature,
Yeah.
and you see what students are going to bring, and you realize, oh, yeah, the skill set's actually the same thing. It just becomes a really, really amazing journey with those students. And for me, it's just really interesting to see how, over the course of your career and my career, both long-term teachers here, for me, 40 years at this point and plus. And it's funny, I was just saying to a group of university students the other day, the benefit of 40 years of teaching is that you can look back and you can see, oh yeah, it took me 10 years to figure that idea out, because it wasn't the kind of thing I could just say, oh, I'm going to try this and I'll know where I'm going to go with it overnight. No, it's some of the ideas took 10 years to take place. And then the other thing that I was thinking about that connects with what we're talking about this morning, desire, is how early on in my teaching, and I suspect for you as well, there was during the 1990s this whole explosion of how can we motivate students, and what motivation strategies are we going to come up with, and how are we going to get parents involved as being really great motivators. Do you remember anything like that during the 90s?
Yes. I mean, during the 90s, we had a specific repertoire that we just followed. And we were trying to motivate with just that repertoire. And I did not really go much outside of that. So the motivation would be, group classes and getting them all together and playing for each other. And sometimes I'd bring another instrument in to accompany them. And I was doing all kinds of things, but it never left the repertoire
Yeah,
that was set.
yeah, yeah. For me, what I noticed about that whole time was that everything really relied on me. And
Yes.
so, and we did lots of creative things. I mean, my students did chamber music, we did tours, we went out and played in the community, we had improvisation workshops, we had composition workshops, and everything would just work just great. And I remember there was a time when I kind of sat down and went, you know, every single one of those activities is something that I put together. I wonder if there's another way to go about this, so I'm not the one that's doing all the work. And it's not that I minded doing all the work, but it seemed to me, if we go back to that initial idea of desire and students' desire, that looking back now, I see I just left out a major component, not intentionally, but because I took the responsibility of being the teacher so seriously, that I had to come up with all these solutions, and I had a whole, what will I say, library of solutions for students, and we just rolled through all of them. It was just amazing.
Yes. That was the old school, the teacher led, total teacher led. But once you give that up and it's teacher student, it just opened so many doors and made so many easy solutions that we had never thought of. I would give some group classes. I would choose a Beatles song or something popular that I knew they all liked because they had chosen that kind of repertoire. Show them a few chord progressions and then just let them go. And they would all play those progressions and sing and turn it into a rap song. And they were just having the time of their lives. And they left so motivated and so happy, knowing that they could do it. And one of the students said to me one time, Lori, those chords have changed my life. But that just shows how strong it is when you allow them. And also, I got to know the student better.
Yeah.
Like, I would be really surprised about the pieces that they brought me. I would not have put those pieces and that student together at all. So it was quite an education for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, it reminds me, oh, this is a long time ago. I don't know how, it could be 15 to 20 years ago. I had this idea that, well, one of my students, she wanted to learn a certain piece. She learned it, and then she informed me that over the course of several weeks at her school, she was maybe in grade 4 or grade 5, that she had taught this piece to a number of other students in the school. and that was her explanation, she became quite well known in the school as the student. If you wanted to learn this piece from, you could go to her and she would teach it to you. So it was this whole social currency thing for her, which I'd never seen before. And so I thought, oh, okay, for the next group class, why don't I just ask all the students to bring any piece, a piece of their own choice, one line only, and their job at the group class is going to be to teach that one line to everybody else in the class. And like you were saying, the diversity of pieces was staggering. I mean, kids brought, of course, there were the movie tunes, there were the pop music things, but there were jazz standards, there were standards from my childhood, which I had no idea this generation knew anything about. And so I just stood back and went, "Oh, this isn't my generation that's growing up again. This is a completely new generation who, because of their access to technology, they have access, all to know how to go on the internet, all to know how to get the latest in whatever area." So it's really interesting how eclectic they are, which compared to me, I was just going in one direction. I never had this broadness that they seem to have. What's your experience with all that kind of eclecticness of what they're bringing?
Well, a lot of them brought me pieces that I would just look at and say, where did you get this? And it would be a lot of the video game stuff. So yeah, and that is never, it wasn't well written, but I could, manipulate it a little bit. But yes, video games, Broadway, old songs, old things. Some of them chose classical pieces for their choice, you
Sure,
know. And the movies, yeah. And the thing is, like you say, the internet, it just opens the world to music. And if they couldn't find a piece, I'd say, go on to YouTube or wherever.
keep
So
on going.
the
Yeah,
resources are endless, for them to pick all kinds of genres of music. And it is interesting what they choose. And it broadens me. It helps me to be a better teacher and more, flexible into what I can teach. So yeah, it is definitely surprising what they do. But oh, it's such a wonderful thing. The whole studio just felt like it got a huge, facelift of opportunity and growth and relationship and motivation and devotion to music. That's one way to keep music in their lives for the next, all of their life.
yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? Because I can see how I thought that my job was to open all kinds of doors for students to things that they couldn't find on their own. And I anticipated that what would they do? They would latch on to all these new things that I was interested in, that I would be showing them. And in some cases it did, but in most cases it was just, oh, thanks, Dr. Thompson, for sharing that with us. But that's not what we're interested in. And compared to, what we've just been talking about for the last 10 minutes or so, about this environment where students are bringing things and what it's doing for their long-term musical development, we can really see that, um, having connections to things that are meaningful for them right now and building on those things and always exploring and doing all those kinds of things, yeah, of course, it's going to have a long-term impact on what they're going to be doing with their music.
Yeah, it really is the answer to keeping music in their lives forever. It gives them the courage and the skills and the knowledge to find the music anytime in their life, any any genre that they want at that particular age. They will have the confidence that they can do it. And that's what I want to give the students is the ability is to make me obsolete.
Right. Yeah. Well, this is our time to wrap things up, and it's probably really just timely for what you've said, because what we're seeing is that if we sow the seeds, or no, I want to use that expression. If we create the fertile environment, where students feel comfortable with bringing things that they're interested in and exploring those things that they're interested in, that is something that they can take for the rest of their lives. And the idea that, oh, yeah, they know where to find pieces. They know what kind of pieces off the internet are going to be playable and doable. And they know what to do with those pieces that come off the internet. And you go, okay, what am I going to do with this? Because I need to do something, or I want to do something about it to make it part of my lifelong journey with music.
Absolutely. It's a great thing.
Well, we'll wrap it up with that. Lorrie Merrell, thank you so much for joining the Teach Music 21C podcast series. I'm Merlin Thompson, and thanks to everybody else for checking in with us today. Lorrie, we'll be visiting again in the future.
Right. Thank you so much. It's always nice chatting with you. Thank you so much.
And thanks everybody else for joining in. We'll see you all again on the Teach Music 21C podcast series. Bye for now.